Hello and very warm welcome to the Canada News with your host Divya right now. Let's take a look on the headlines. Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu once again raised the issue of complete closure of the border. Mississauga Streets Valley MP Neena Tangri gave a statement on the situation of COVID in India, saying that the whole world has come forward to help India. NDP national leader Jagmeet Singh raised the issue of affordable housing and demanded that the government invest in 5 lakh houses and apartments. Now news in detail. Brampton West MPP Amarjot Sandhu once again raised the issue of complete closure of the border. He said that Premier Ford was talking about the issue with the Prime Minister and people coming through the international border are getting variants. Sandhu said the people are arriving at Toronto airport through international and domestic flights, which is completely banned by the federal government.
The next member statement, the member for Brampton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since last year, the Interior Government and the Premier have been calling on the federal government to take real action to secure our borders. Unfortunately, previous measures have not worked to keep the variants out, and now Ontario has the 4 main variants of concern. This includes the UK variant, which has become the dominant strain in Ontario, and Speaker, according to new modelling, variants will soon make up 90% of the daily cases. Weak border measures allowed these dangerous variants into Ontario. As nothing is more important than protecting the health and safety of all Ontarians, the Ontario government has also restricted travel by land and water into Ontario from Manitoba and Quebec. But air travel and international borders are a federal responsibility, so we need the federal government to take further action. Speaker, we are asking for a ban on all non-essential travel, mandatory pre-departure PCR testing for everyone entering Ontario, and for the federal government to close the land border loophole. Mr. Speaker, in the past 2 weeks, there have been 23 domestic flights and 35 international flights into Toronto with possible COVID-19 exposures, and also over 150,000 people, not including essential truckers, have crossed Canada's land border. We cannot afford to let a vaccine-resistant variant into our country. More can and must be done to ensure the health and safety of all Ontarians and prevent the 4th wave from entering our borders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Mississauga Streets Valley MP Neena Tangri gave a statement on the situation of COVID in India, saying that the whole world has come forward to help India and the Prime Minister has also decided to send 3,000 ventilators to the Indian Red Cross. According to the Tangri, he also discussed the situation with the Punjab Health Minister Balbir Sidhu, who is concerned about the situation.
Today I'm here to talk to you about Health Canada's authorization of Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine in children 12 to 15 years of age. This is the first vaccine authorized in Canada for the prevention of COVID-19 in children and marks a significant milestone in Canada's fight against the pandemic. Health Canada received Pfizer-BioNTech's submission for this expanded indication on April 16. After completing a thorough and independent scientific review of the evidence, the department determined that this vaccine is safe and effective when used in this younger age group. Health Canada's assessment built upon the previous review of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, where data on both the early studies that were part of the development of the vaccine as well as manufacturing information had already been examined. Scientists reviewed data from an extension of the original large Phase 3 study conducted in adults, which included over 2,000 participants between 12 and 15 years of age. The study used the same 2-dose regimen and the same dose of vaccine that has been authorized for use in adults. Participants in the 12 to 5-year age group were all enrolled at sites in the United States. The trial also compared the immune response in this age group and its safety profile to a group of young adults 16 to 25 years of age already participating in the study. Data from the clinical trial showed that the vaccine's efficacy after the second dose in preventing COVID-19 in this younger age group was 100%. There were over 1,000 people in each of the 2 groups, one that did not receive the vaccine and one that did. In the group that did not receive the vaccine, there were 18 cases of COVID-19, and in the group that received the vaccine, there were 0. The efficacy was also further supported by antibody levels measured in a smaller group of the 12 to 15-year-olds that were comparable to the levels seen in young adults. The safety profile of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine in 12 to 15-year-olds is similar to what we saw for older people. That is, the most commonly reported side effects were temporary and mild, like a sore arm, chills, or fever. Health Canada applied its science and evidence-based review process and required that the same high standards were met as with all our vaccine reviews. We also know that millions of people have received the Pfizer vaccine and no new safety issues have been identified. As with all of the vaccines authorized under the interim order, Health Canada has placed terms and conditions on this authorization.
NDP National Leader Jagmeet Singh raised the issue of affordable housing and demanded that the government invest in 5 lakh houses and apartments. He said that the Prime Minister mentions this problem but does not take steps. According to Singh, this should be an investment in the cooperative so that the housing is not considered as a stock market.
And to talk about this issue, it's really important to hear from people that are living it and experiencing it. But I can say with a lot of clarity that while we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's been very tough, it's been very difficult, and it's taken up a lot of our time and a lot of our thoughts, it hasn't meant that the other crises have gone away. And we are still in the grip of a housing crisis that is impacting people across the country. But I know in the Lower Mainland, in my riding of Burnaby and across the Lower Mainland, people are feeling it particularly painfully. It is so difficult to find a place to call home. People simply can't. And I speak to people from all walks of life, whether they're young people starting off their life, a young professional, folks with families, seniors, people with low income, people with no income. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is having a hard time finding a place to call home. And so I look at this pandemic and the recovery. We are going to get through this pandemic. We are going to get through it together. And the opportunity we have coming out of this pandemic is to make some choices that will actually set us up for success in the future. And one of those choices has to be investing in housing. I want to see us take on this crisis like it truly is a crisis. Because the problem is that Liberals have often said it's a crisis. Justin Trudeau has said that, but he hasn't acted like it's a crisis. He's more interested in making a showy announcement than doing anything. 6 years of Liberals being in government, of Justin Trudeau being Prime Minister, and has it actually made a difference in people's lives? Can people now afford homes? No, they can't, because it hasn't been taken like a serious issue. It hasn't been treated like the crisis it is. So what we're proposing is some concrete steps. Let's massively invest in housing as a way to create jobs locally in communities and as a way to ensure people have a place to call home. We want to see people have a place they can buy. We want to make sure that there's affordable rental. And so what we're proposing is investing massively to create 500,000 new homes, investing in cooperatives, in not-for-profits, building apartments, building townhouses, building houses. We want to build massively as a way to recover out of this pandemic and a way to build forward for the future. We also want to put some measures in place that stop some of the pressures that are driving up the cost of housing. We know that people are treating Canada like a stock market when it comes to housing and just plopping their money into the housing market, hoping it'll continue to grow. And we don't want our housing market to be used like a stock market. It should be a place for people to buy a place they can call home, to find a place to call home.
Health Canada says the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine can now be given to children 12 and older. It is safe to do so. The Federal Health Agency has announced that it will allow children between the ages of 12 and 15 to be vaccinated earlier. People aged 16 and over are allowed to get the vaccine.
Member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
Good morning, Speaker. Today I would like to talk about the dire COVID situation in India. Each day I have conversations with friends and relatives, all who know someone who has succumbed to this horrible virus. As you may have seen on the news, record numbers of the population are testing positive. The situation with the shortage of oxygen and other supplies has the whole world stepping up. I am so proud of our Premier and the people of Ontario who swiftly came to the forefront and are sending 3,000 ventilators to the Indian Red Cross. Even Punjab has seen massive spread of COVID. On Tuesday, I spoke to the Health Minister of Punjab, the Honourable Balbir Sidhu, who himself recently recovered from COVID. He was very worried, telling us about the overwhelmed hospital staff and the general public who are desperate. As our Premier said, and I quote, "We stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of India during these difficult times. Our government will work closely with His Excellency Ajay Bisaria, High Commissioner of India, and the Consul General to Toronto, and stand ready to assist further with India's urgent needs for as long as we are able to. We are all in this together, and we will all overcome this together." Speaker, COVID is deadly, and we cannot be complacent. We need to continue to physically distance, wear a mask, and most importantly, only go out for the essentials. COVID came to Canada through our borders, which is why we are asking, no pleading to the federal government to restrict travel and close our borders. Although we are facing tremendous challenges here in Ontario, with more patients requiring intensive care, our government is taking swift and decisive action. I want to thank the Premier for his leadership during these difficult times and for his assistance with supporting India in their true time of need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Yaffe, Associate Medical Officer of Ontario, highlighted the current status of COVID-19 in the province, noting that 9,156 cases were reported in Ontario. And today, 3,224 cases have been reported, he said, adding that the 7-day average in Ontario is 3,369 per day.
So since our last update on Monday, Ontario has reported an additional 9,156 cases of COVID-19. If you break it down, that was 2,791 cases on Tuesday, 2,941 on Wednesday, and after those 2 days that were below 3,000, today we're reporting 3,424 cases. Ontario's current 7-day average for daily COVID-19 cases is 3,369, which is down from 3,810 last week and 4,176 2 weeks ago. When we look at the 7-day case rate per 100,000 population, the provincial number has been decreased by 15%. However, it is still high at 165.8 cases per 100,000 population. The number of patients in hospital and ICU remains high, with 1,964 people currently in hospital and 877 of them in ICU. And sadly, since our last update, we are reporting another 95 people in Ontario who have died from COVID-19. As always, our condolences and our thoughts are with those who are mourning the loss of a loved one in these very difficult times. In terms of testing, 54,118 tests have been processed yesterday with a positivity rate of 6.8%. The current 7-day average for percent positivity is 7.9%. There are now 84,731 cases that are confirmed variants of concern in Ontario. The majority of these are still the B117 variant, which was first identified in the United Kingdom, although we are seeing increasing numbers of the B1351, or South African, and the P1, or Brazilian, variants.
The medical officer of British Columbia, Dr. Bonnie Henry, spoke about the COVID-19 outbreaks in British Columbia. He said that 628 new cases were reported in BC today. The number of patients is more than 136,000.
Today we report 684 new cases of COVID-19 have been diagnosed in the province in the past 24 hours, one of which was an epidemiologically linked case. So that brings our total in the province to 133,619 people diagnosed with COVID-19. Of those, 153 people are in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region, 445 are here in the Fraser Health Region, 17 people who live on the Vancouver Island Health Region, 52 people live in the Interior Health Region, and 27 in the Northern Health Region. That leaves us with 6,802 active cases across British Columbia, of whom 457 people are in hospital now, 154 of them in critical care or ICU, and 125,025 people have now recovered from COVID-19. We have no new outbreaks to report today, leaving us with 4 active outbreaks in long-term care assisted living or independent living and 3 in our acute care facilities. We have one additional death to report in the last few days, bringing our total to 1,595 people who have died from COVID-19 in British Columbia. And as always, our condolences go out to the families, to the caregivers, and to the communities. We mourn the loss of each and every individual along with you. We have been reaching another exciting milestone, though, in our immunization program here in BC. So sometime today, the 2 millionth dose will have been given to people in British Columbia. This is very good news. So far, as of early this morning, we've had 1,995,496 doses of all 3 of our COVID-19 vaccines administered in British Columbia.
Andrea Harworth, NDP leader in the Ontario Legislative Assembly, questioned Long-Term Care Minister Marilee Fulton, asking why the report released in late May had not yet been investigated. Replied Long-Term Care Minister Marilee Fulton.
Following the Armed Forces report back around the end of May last year, the Premier pledged this, and I quote, "As soon as we received this report on Monday, we launched a full investigation, and the results of our investigation will be turned over to the police." Yesterday it was made clear by the Solicitor General, in fact, in her media scrum, that there was no investigation launched. The investigation he promised never, in fact, took place. Why not?
Minister of Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. The Patient Ombudsman, the Auditor General, and the Long-Term Care Commissioners have scrutinized the events of the COVID-19 pandemic in long-term care, and the Ontario Ombudsman is currently examining and investigating as well. All deaths in long-term care homes are required to be reported to the coroner, and where appropriate, he also investigates. The Premier promised an investigation in the wake of the Canadian Armed Forces report, and that investigation took place. Each home was inspected by 2 or more inspectors, some of those lasting over a month. Those reports were posted publicly. Had inspectors found potentially criminal conduct, they would have passed that information on to the police.
Leader of the Opposition, supplementary.
Speaker, there's just no evidence that the Premier actually followed through on his promise for an investigation. There was no investigation. There were no police charges. The Commission, in fact, we all know, found that 26 people in long-term care died not of COVID-19, but of dehydration and neglect. In fact, for the last several days, the Premier and the Minister have refused to tell Ontarians when they learned of this horrifying fact, what they knew and when. So the Premier promised. He promised the people of this Ontario. He promised grieving families.
Major General Denny Fortin said 80 million doses were received today for the provinces and territories. He said that 2 million doses of Pfizer have also been received this week. He said that a large consignment of vaccine is also being sent by Moderna, which will start from the next week.
To date, we have distributed over 18 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to provinces and territories. Earlier this week, we received 2 million doses of Pfizer-BioNTech, the largest shipment from this manufacturer to date, and deliveries to provinces are now complete. As for Moderna, yesterday we received more than 1 million doses ahead of schedule. The shipment was originally set to arrive in country and distributed into next week. Deliveries to provinces and territories are underway, which will provide them with the opportunity to administer these doses into the coming days and into next week. Moving forward, we continue to expect weekly shipments of over 2 million doses from Pfizer-BioNTech over the course of this month, and over 2.4 million a week in June. For the week of May 17th, we can expect to receive 1 million doses from Moderna, and we continue to work with Moderna to determine upcoming delivery schedules. We now have visibility for AstraZeneca doses from the COVAX facility. We can expect to receive 65,000 doses. in the coming weeks using our contracted logistics service provider, FedEx and Omar. Additional detail will be shared on the shipment when it's available. And in closing, vaccine rollout continues with the sustained arrival of authorized vaccine into Canada. We have now reached that big lift period where weekly deliveries are more significant, and this should bring us to approximately 25 million doses by the end of May. Yeah, the plan at this time is to continue to distribute on a per capita basis to all provinces. The territories still have an ability to signal whether or not they want to receive those doses in the future. So we intend to continue with that approach. And at this time, we have not received indications from any jurisdiction, federal or provincial, that they would want to alter that distribution model at this time.
Toronto has issued new Section 22 orders to curb the spread of COVID-19. The orders issued under in-person learning will take effect on May 10. According to the news release, these orders will increase the provisional lockdown regulations. Earlier in-class learning was discontinued in schools under the Education Act. The order will apply to all educational institutions, including independent schools. Similar to provisional orders, special needs students will have special exemptions for in-person learning and childcare. In a separate document, the city school closure orders apply to in-person instructions and do not prohibit school-going students from entering school premises for teaching or other infrastructures. So that's all we have in this edition. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updated news.